Good morning, CMXers. Please welcome to the stage the CEO of CMX, David Spinks.
That was too early. It's only 9 a.m. You can't yell tequila yet. What's up, CMX? Wow, this is our 8th conference. Can you believe that? 4 years, 8 conferences. I heard we started an earthquake last night. Was that an earthquake? Was that just CMX arriving? The headline said, CMX arrives. LA is shook. Wasn't prepared for this level of positivity. Are you with me? That's what you say it. Are you confused? No? Inside joke from the workshop. All right. Oh, very excited to be here. So thrilled to see all of you. This is like my favorite day of the year. I just get to invite all my friends and all the people I really like to spend a couple days together. How many of you are coming from out of town? Holy cow. How many of you are from LA? How many of you are from downtown LA? So the rest of you are also from out of town. Took you like an hour and a half to get here. I think I got here quicker from San Francisco. How many of you are from out of the country? Holy shoot. Wow. Where are you coming from? Shout out your country. Canada? Where? Russia. It's Texas. Who else? What? China. Spain. Israel. Represent. Where? What? Germany. No. All right. We have a lot of fun for the next 2 days. This is a really special conference. We changed a lot of things. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But this is a really unique time for CMX. It's a really unique time for the community industry. A lot of things are changing. A lot of things are moving. Seeing the people in this room and the companies in this room and how everything's evolved since we first started this 4 years ago, when this really wasn't an industry when we started. There wasn't like common language. Like everyone I met that was doing this work, for the most part, thought they were the only ones doing this work, including myself. And so we would spend a lot of time just meeting other people and trying to learn, like, how do you actually build community? How do you prove the value of this work? And we'd run into the same challenges. And over time, after meeting more and more and more people who were doing this work, we decided it was probably time to start bringing everyone together. So February 2014 was the first CMX Summit. And a lot's changed since then. We're evolving as an industry. We're starting to mature. We're starting to figure some of this stuff out. Right? And I think you'll pick up if you've been to CMX Summit before. How many of you have been to CMX Summit before? All right, and the rest of you first time. So a lot of people here for the first time. For those of you who have been here before, I'm excited to talk to you and hear what you think from speaking to other people in the room and seeing the speakers. And if you also feel like the level of conversation and the way we're thinking about this stuff and how we're solving these problems are starting to move up. They're starting to level up. And so I'm just going to start us off today really quick by going through some of the trends that we've seen happen in the industry over the last year. CMX, our team, is in a little bit of a unique position because while a lot of you are spending every day building communities, we are also building a CMX community, but what we're doing is looking at the industry as a whole across all the different spaces, whether it's internal communities, developer evangelism, ambassador programs, B2B, B2C, nonprofits. We're looking at community as this holistic industry and trying to identify how it's evolving and what we need to do as an industry to kind of rise the tide for all of us. So let's go through some trends real quick. First, experienced community professionals are in high demand right now. We're starting to see more and more companies look for community professionals that have more experience. Hopefully they have some experience in the science of community. and they're looking for people who are metrics driven, who have been building this stuff for a while. And so LinkedIn just posted that customer experience, one of the top 20 jobs of 2017. I think community and customer experience have a lot of corollaries. A lot of community is driven by that. There's 121,000 results for Director of Community now. We're seeing more and more people take on director and senior level roles in community. And just in the last month, we've seen Amazon, Square, Stripe, Facebook, WordPress, Airbnb, Udemy, American Cancer Society, Foursquare. These are just the ones I saw quickly in the last month that have been hiring for senior director level community positions. There's some really good research from our friends at the Community Roundtable recently. They do these studies on community salaries and work, and they found that 20% of community managers in 2015 had risen to a strategist role in 2016. 45% reported to a vice president, senior VP, or C-level manager. And the average compensation for a community manager approached $80,000, with strategists and directors earning over $100,000. And so in a role that historically has been looked at a little bit more entry level and hasn't always gotten those higher levels, we see it starting to move up that ladder, taking on more strategic roles. So that's really exciting. As we move into these strategic roles, it gives us more opportunity to really have an impact on the culture of our companies and start to bring community into it in the right way. Trend number 2, membership is starting to become this very, very new way of doing business. A lot of businesses moving towards the membership direction, and we're seeing a pushback on advertising. So this was a study just published in May by Forrester that basically said it's the end of advertising as we know it. They said CMOs will shift billions from ad interruptions to branded relationships. To read this quote, society doesn't need advertising like it used to. People have less time for interruption-driven media. Consumers are ready for deeper relationships with the companies that matter to them. And they provided a ton of data that's showing ads just aren't working. People avoid them. We're becoming really good at tuning that stuff out. And what people are expecting now, what they're looking for, is a deeper connection through their relationships with businesses. And simultaneously now we're seeing this push towards membership. So Patreon is a really interesting platform for artists. Paid over $150 million to artists in just the last year, just this year. They just raised a ton of money, and it's all driven by you can subscribe to the artists and the people that you want to support. You can pay for this kind of creation. We're seeing journalism move in this direction in a big way. Medium faces this really tough decision of do we go the same path down advertising where we know there's a clear business model and we could be making money here, or do we take a little bit of a risk and see if there's a more sustainable way that we can drive journalism? Because as we've seen, the ad-driven journalism model isn't serving us very well right now. It's all about numbers and clicks, not about the quality of the content. We see Men's Health, Forbes, lots of these organizations launching membership programs around their articles for their members to be able to have conversations and be connected to each other around the content, not just consume the content. We see some interesting things like the Membership Puzzle Project, which is trying to study this whole trend of journalism moving towards membership programs. The Coral Project from Mozilla, where they're building tools and resources for journalism to move towards this membership-driven model. And we're seeing membership grow in finance. We're seeing it grow in fashion, retail. Companies are starting to think more about how are we building a long-term relationship with our customers? How do we make them feel like members rather than just consumers? I thought Harvard Business Review did a really good job of describing the difference between subscription and membership. They said, invest in building a culture of membership. Subscription is a pricing structure. Membership is a mindset. Successful membership businesses focus on the long-term relationship. This has implications across the organization. As we start to see more businesses move towards membership, guess what becomes really important? Communities. Retention, keeping people engaged, making sure they're happy, reducing churn. As businesses are thinking more about the long-term relationship and keeping those memberships subscribed, your work becomes more and more important. Trend number 3, looking at the technology space. We see a lot of the community platforms the ones who have been around for a while are starting to consolidate. But we see a lot of new technology starting to form. So just in this last year, we saw Higher Logic raise money, acquired Socius. We saw Mighty Networks launch, raise another $12 million. Mobilize raised 6.5, launched their platform in the last few years and have been growing quickly. ESW, I don't know if you've seen the news in the last year, they acquired Jive, sold JiveX to Lithium, and now also acquired DNN. So a lot of these platforms that have been with us for a long time are moving around, they're consolidating, they're starting to pool resources, and ESW is basically buying up a lot of different customer-focused software and bringing it all under one umbrella, which has a lot of implications. On one hand, it's good, you can have access to these suites of resources. On the other hand, it's consolidating, and a lack of diversity in our technology might be a problem. And for platforms that are trying to do everything, that might make it hard to do any one thing really well. And I think we're going to start to see this evolve over the next few years. We're going to start to see companies start to specialize. Some will be really good at data and CRM management. Some will be really good at engagement. Some will focus on events. We'll start to see a little bit more specialization, and I hope we see more integration so that we really build an ecosystem of technology for these tools, and we're not locked into individual tools to provide everything for us. And we know the importance of being able to track and measure our work, and we need our technology to help us do that. There's a new category that's growing, offline community at scale. So Meetup Pro, Bevy, and Splash have all launched these programs that allow you to scale distributed event programs. So if you have community members and you have ambassadors in cities all over the world and you want to empower them to host their own events, these are 3 platforms that came up very recently that help you do this. And that technology didn't really exist before. So we're seeing a lot of companies start to build these kinds of distributed event programs, and there's new technologies forming for that. And then you'll hear the next 2 speakers after me talk about these a lot more, but we're seeing new technologies open up a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. We have bots and AI, which is changing the way businesses are interacting with customers. A lot of the repetitive tasks can be handled. See things like, I have a couple examples here with Assist, which actually handles customer interactions and actually point of sale all through bots. We have Speak, which works with employee knowledge bases, and it's all AI-driven, so any employee that has questions, they can go and get them from this basic bot-driven interface. So as we create bots and AI that manage these interactions for us, that makes our lives a lot easier, but it also separates us a little bit more from that personal interaction. So that will bring opportunities and challenges for community professionals. And then we have blockchain. We can't even wrap our heads around, or at least I can't, maybe some of you can, around what the implications are for blockchain and community. There's some really interesting things like just full privacy, being able to have one-on-one interactions or group interactions with people with no centralized database storing that information. So you can have a lot more privacy in your interactions. There's also things around identity. A lot of the issues or questions we ask in community is around identity, anonymity, pseudonymity. And with blockchain, you might be able to have one identity across the internet, regardless of what community you're using, one reputation. And that will change how we look at reputation and trust in community. 4, community is still struggling to measure and prove its value. We're getting better. This is research from CMX from this last year. And you can see we asked what value is community driving for your business, and 99% were able to define a value. Only 1% said they didn't know yet. So that's good. We're starting to understand how community is driving value for our business. But as far as actually measuring it, as far as actually having metrics in place, 44% within 6 months of launching their community still did not have metrics in place. So you can imagine a sales program or a marketing program. Before you even launch it, you generally will know what metrics you're trying to hit. But for community, even after choosing your platform, launching it, growing for 6 months, 44% of companies still did not have metrics in place. That's a problem. We're going to have to figure that out together. Hopefully you'll get some insight at this event that will help you really start to define those metrics, and you'll hear that narrative here because it's incredibly important for us to be able to measure our work. If we're going to want to get more buy-in for community and be able to build the communities that we envision, We have to be able to speak the business language. We have to be able to get buy-in from our organizations, and that means we have to bring it to them. We have to bring it to where they are. We can't ask them to come to us. And that means being metrics-driven and being able to prove your value. What are companies actually tracking? 50% of respondents planned on measuring customer lifetime value, but only 24% actually measured it once they launch. So it's a little bit of not knowing what to track, but then there's clearly another problem of we don't have the ability to track it. This is what happens. A lot of companies say, of course, we're going to build community. As a result, our customers are going to be, or our users are going to be a lot more loyal, and the customer lifetime value will go up. Great. You got buy-in, launch your community, but then when you actually start to put that data together and try to connect those dots for your team, it's really hard. The technology isn't there that's helping us easily connect community, engagement, and actions to our customer databases. So we're having trouble measuring that. But community is moving in a new direction. It used to be just support forums, right? The most popular, today still the most popular value of community is support forums, as you saw before. But this graph shows how companies are changing their value over time. So a lot of companies change their value from the point they launch. And you can see here, ideation, this is like innovation, collecting product feedback from your community, is becoming a really popular focus. And then acquisition and advocacy, growth, is becoming a really big focus. So you see community moving away from the traditional just support forum model into something that's a little bit more about innovation and growth, which I think is a good thing. That's getting closer to that bottom line, and we're really going to be able to prove the value more in those arenas. And then finally, we have tech and society finally realizing the importance of community management and meaningful connection. This is a big macro trend, and this is where I spend a lot of my time thinking about this and how it's impacting our work and why our work's so important and why I think it's so important that we're here in this room together. The APA just released this report basically saying that social connection should be a health priority for the United States. They said the World Health Organization now lists social support networks as a determinant of health. Being socially connected is associated with a 50% reduced risk of early death. And there are perhaps no other factors that can have such a large impact both on length and quality of life, from the cradle to the grave, as social connection. Real light stuff. But it's clear that in this world of we're like more connected than ever before, we're feeling more and more lonely. This is an article that just came out that you might have read. How smartphones are destroying a generation. Teens who spend 3 hours a day or more on electronic devices are 35% more likely to have a risk factor for suicide, such as making a suicide plan. If you read this article, it's filled with stats that just show our addiction to technology and to social networks are making us more lonely, more isolated, and more depressed. And so our work is really important, and we have to be really conscious of what we're doing, because a lot of the work we do as community builders is to create more engagement and keep people active, but we have to be conscious of what that interaction looks like and if it's actually healthy for people. And so we see this focus, and we see the tech industry, and we see the world start to shift the way we talk about business and social networks and technology. We saw Facebook change their mission statement this year. Whatever you believe about Facebook, this is huge for our industry because this is one of the largest companies in the world. This is the largest social network in the world. For the first time in their history, shifting their mission statement to focus entirely on community. Give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. Sounds like our mission statement. So they want to now not just think about like connecting people and just having them on the network, but the quality of those connections. And we're going to see as more companies start to think this way, we're going to get more and more buy-in, more interest in our expertise and our understanding of how to build meaningful connection and community. And then finally, we have the merging of for good and for profit. We see more and more companies going the B Corp route, right? Being for good. I always joke around that I don't know why we have to say for good. Like, what are the other companies doing? It's like, we're for bad company? Do evil? Like, I hope in the future we can just call it a company. For good's assumed. But this is an article about how for good doesn't have to mean anti-profit. For good can actually be a competitive advantage that's driving growth, that's driving profit. And we see more and more companies that are proving that. Their purpose is what drives profit and the ability to outcompete in their market. And their profit is what allows them to outlast foundations and government programs trying to provide the same purpose. Being community-driven, being purpose-driven is a competitive advantage. We've all known that for a long time. I think the rest of the world is starting to figure it out. And it's really exciting to see because I think community and purpose come hand in hand. You can't be a purpose-driven company without focusing on community. This is from the last CMX Summit. This is my friend Ted Reingold. He was actually the author of that article. He wrote that was his quote. He believed really deeply in the importance of companies being purpose-driven. And he passed away a few weeks ago. He was a big supporter of the CMX community. He was a mentor of mine. And he believed in this. He believed in what we're doing here. And this was me and Tim Falls. Is Tim Falls here? Where you at? No? He's late? Tim. So we're having a conversation about, he was actually the founder of Catster and Dogster, two of the largest original online communities. And he believes so deeply in what we're doing here at CMX and in being a purpose-driven company. And this was his first CMX Summit, and he was telling us his stories about building community. And I think about him today with all of us here and how proud he would be to see this continue to grow and what he would want to see. I think about when someone passes away, you kind of think about what they would want you to do. And when I imagine that with Ted, I just think he would say, just keep doing what you guys are doing. Keep fighting. Because we know there's something at the top here. I'm imagining a world where every company is community-driven, where there's VPs of community in every company. It's core. It's not even something we have to sell anymore. It's like you're launching a company, you have to figure out how to do community. It comes hand in hand. We don't know what the path is there yet. It's kind of, we're in the trees, right? And it's up to us to pave these routes up there. We don't know what it looks like exactly yet. But what we're doing here is figuring that out. And we try to put people on stage here who understand this work and who have figured a couple of things out. But every single person in this room has figured something out that you can share with someone else. And spending 2 days here together, learning, eating, going back to your hotel, keep hanging out, ask each other, what have you learned? Share your challenges, work with each other, because if we can all really put our heads together and work as an industry, we'll actually change the world. We'll actually make it more community-driven, and we'll make it more connected. So I'm going to lead us into the day with the last message from Ted. This is actually his autoresponder. And he shared some of his lessons for us, and I want us to bring that into our event today. Be good to each other. Enjoy every day. Wanting is suffering. Right? It's not always about growth. It's not always about more. It's about the quality of our connections. The journey is still the destination, now more than ever. So on the days when this is really hard, when building community feels like a thankless job, just realize that this is all part of the journey, and you're going to look back in 10 years and remember these days with fondness. And the trend of purpose is coming like a tidal wave. Get out ahead of it, enjoy the ride, and die fulfilled. And finally, reframe your thinking of what your career can do for you into what your career can do for others, and wonderful, meaningful work awaits you. All right. How about we start this conference?